Hello, everybody. I'm Sue Frederick, and I want to have a mystical conversation with you, the kind where we lose ourselves in the wonders of divine mysteries, share dreams from the other side, intuitive nudgings, and soul mission yearnings. I'm the author of 11 books, including Through a Divine Lens, Bridges to Heaven, I See Your Dream Job, Sacred Numerology Workbook. I'm a lifelong intuitive, master numerologist, ordained unity minister, and soul regression therapist. I've helped thousands of clients align their life with their birth path according to numerology. But I am most excited today about my guest, a friend, someone I've known many, many years. Her name is Felicia Bender, and she is known as the Practical Numerologist. She uses numerology to validate and define your pathway and purpose in life in an empowered way that's fun, inspiring, and actionable. She's the author of several books and is the resident numerologist for astrostyle.com. Felicia is a go-to numerology expert featured in many media outlets, including Refinery 29, Women's Health, and more. Welcome, Felicia.
It's wonderful to see you, Sue.
It's been a while, right?
It has been a while. It's been a long time.
So, how long ago was it when we met?
Oh gosh, I think maybe 2010.
You're right. I think I was
Yeah,
doing a workshop
yeah,
somewhere.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it has been a few hot minutes, right?
Yes, and you took my numerology coach training and got introduced into numbers through my books and
Yes.
my trainings, and I've watched you grow and prosper with all of that. So how would you say the numbers have affected your life?
Oh gosh, in every way, I think that I mean, speaking of when we met, it was I was at a Boulder bookstore where I picked up your book. I Can See Your Dream Job, and that's where I was really introduced to numerology as a concept. Because the funny thing is that I don't think I would have ever picked up a numerology, just flat out numerology book at
Right.
that point in my life. It's funny how things find you, right, in this spiritual world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that numbers have affected me in in the whole fabric of my being, not only just noticing numbers in life on that very practical level, and yet also simply seeing everything through that lens, through the
Yeah.
lens of the numbers, what they have to offer us. I'm that geeky person who will start watching a movie and
Oh, I'm the same way. I
and
have
I'll
to go figure out every
right,
celebrity's
I'll
past.
freeze it and then
And
go and look them up.
absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, I've been really got into football this year because
Oh,
the world was making me unhappy. And so I had to find something joyful to focus on in my spare time. And I got back into football. But the reason is, Felicia, that I would go and study the quarterbacks' paths. And I completely fell in love with Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. He's a Virgo 5 path. And
yeah.
I've watched how he's manifested that beautiful expression of the Virgo 5. And then when he plays other quarterbacks, I go and see what their path is and what the soul agreement is. And it's been so fun when the world is burning and crashing and, and crazy conflict. I'm watching football.
Which is kind of the gladiators on the turf anyway. So
That's right.
get out your aggression subliminally
That's
there. So
right. But the other thing, well, for me, it's really the joy, like these beautiful young athletes, in their 20s, giving their joy, their passion, their heart to this game. The world is so cynical right now.
Mhm.
And that's the part of the world I don't resonate with. I came of age at a time in, 60s hippie. We were going to change the world and save the world, It was
Yeah.
all about women's rights and marching against the Vietnam War. And, now I'm watching such a cynical kind of mean dialogue in the world,
Yeah.
and so much conflict and so much focus on greed and money. And so when I find something like powerful, beautiful athletes having joy for their sport and for what they're doing with their lives and how they're making their money, it is so heart opening for me. And
Hmm.
then to go and look at the numbers and say, oh, yeah, that's how a five path is, very courageous. And then the Virgo analytical mind, it makes him so smart. And to be able to enjoy it that way. It's so funny because now my husband Gene will be watching a game because I got him back into football too. He was always the baseball guy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so I got him back into football, and he'll go, wow, what is the path of the quarterback for the Steelers? And I'll go look it up and I'll tell him. And so,
Yep, you gotta put it all into context. So, to your point, I very much, I mean, numerology has just repositioned everything. It's just how I see myself, how I see everything, how I see the
Mhm.
world. It's really a fantastic modality.
And how do you, we're here to talk about 2025. It's right now January of 2025. And a lot of people, including us, are on podcast and things talking about the nine energy of 2025 because it's a
Yes.
universal 9 year. And we both have our insights into that. So, what would you say about the power of the nine in 2025?
I would definitely, the way I've been feeling into it and also experiencing it, looking at it, I always feel as though we can't just cherry pick one thing with the nine because the nine is a container of all
Mhm.
of
Yeah,
all that is.
the alpha
And
and the omega. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And so for me, though, on a very, I guess practical level, and I don't even know if I want to call it a practical level, I feel as though this is a cacophony with anyone who's into astrology, which you
Yeah.
obviously are as well. There is so much going on just in the world in an ascension process.
Right.
We can see it with the vibration, that with
Speeding up.
scientists are looking at it just from a very scientific point of view. So,
Hmm.
from that aspect, I feel like it is really a point to which there is no business as usual.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are still reaching for that. I
Hmm.
just want things to be back to normal or
Yeah.
whatever, right? So they want some certainty around something. And I just listened to an Esther Perel a podcast the other, just her being interviewed. And I love the quote that stuck in my mind from her is that certainty is the enemy of change.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I was like, ooh, I'm going to earmark that one and my
Yeah.
own personal life as well. And so with the nine, we have to realize that it is a bridge into a very, very liminal space.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because what you're saying, we each have nine personal year cycles as well as this nine universal year. And you're saying that people want things to go back to normal. When we hit our nine personal years, then we think, unless we know about the numbers, gee, things are changing and I don't want them to. I want things to stay the way
I'm
they are or
scared.
go back
Yeah.
to normal. And yet the 9 year in our personal lives always is the roto-rooter. It cleanses out what needs to be released. And so when we start our new cycle, our 1 year, we are really new. We're seeing the world in a different way.
Mhm.
Now, if we look at that collectively in the universal, who we are as a country and as a world right now, it'll be a completely different vision and understanding of that a year from now. And
Exactly.
I feel that if it's ET full disclosure, that could be a very good way that that happens because it shakes people out of their beliefs of how big the universe is or that we're the only life form in the universe, which makes me
Right.
laugh.
I know.
The arrogance of
Especially the
humans.
arrogance of the most intelligent life form. I'm like, oh my
Exactly
goodness.
right.
Yes.
Exactly. So I keep saying, all right, ETs, it's time. Like, how long are you guys going to wait? We need you to arrive. But they are here. And so this could be the year where they step in because they are not going to let Earth annihilate itself with nuclear war because Earth is needed in the great cosmos. And it's a great place for souls to grow in incarnations here on Earth.
Mhm.
Earth is actually known as the most difficult incarnation
Yep.
that your soul can choose. So they need us here.
Well, and Earth is part of an ecosystem.
Right,
And
right.
and you can't the imbalance has a reverberating effect to all aspects of the ecosystem of the universe.
So we don't
Exactly.
have to worry, I think, about Putin and China and even Trump pushing the buttons here because there is a higher good that will be overseen. And I think even when we study the numbers, we know that when we hit every nine ending, it does feel like we don't know what's coming next, or we can't see it, or maybe nothing is coming next. And then the new cycle begins for all of us, and it's bigger, grander, more magnificent than we could ever imagine. And I went back and looked at all the previous nine universal years, and I've talked about them on some podcasts. And, they were all life changers. They all
Yes.
kicked the world up to a different conversation, a different level of knowingness, including one 9 year was the year that the World Wide Web came into being, right? So imagine life. I was telling somebody yesterday that I remembered when I was a journalist, editor of a magazine, and there was no internet, and we just wrote on our typewriters and then we wrote on our word processors and she was like, that's impossible. How did you get your story to the printer and everything? And I'm like, girl, it was a different world,
An absolute analog world.
And
Absolutely.
so the change now can be that big, don't you think? I mean, with
Oh,
AI and everything that's happening.
it's exponential, and I think that we can't even begin to truly fathom it. Those who are listening to us right now are more than likely those who would be able to fathom it because that's kind of the world we live in. We listen to other people who channel, who other people who bring in this kind of information as more of the baseline. And yet there's a huge portion, obviously, of our population that does not have access or does not choose to have access to this
Well,
information.
that's changing.
And that is changing, and that is changing dramatically. And so I feel that that is a part of the nucleus of the nine energy. It's that number of humanity and humanitarianism. It is a
It is.
kicking and screaming, if you
Yeah.
want to put it that way, but into more of looking at what we value
And taking care of each other. I
and
mean, that's
taking
the
care.
thing, when this election was electing a party that was saying, no, we're not going to take care of each other. We're going to close the borders. We're going to kick out the immigrants. We're not going to have Social Security. We're not going to have Medicare. And I was just thinking, you humans, you think you're in charge of all this, but the nine is the most humanitarian energy.
Yep.
So there is absolutely no way those things are going to happen in a 9 year because we are called in the nine to surrender personal ego in order to care for the greater good, the whole. And, we know that that doesn't mean that our country is going to be this little island taking over other parts of the world.
Exactly. And yet, as you know, as we both know, we're always dealing with the oppositional pole, right?
Right,
So there
right,
are going to be, and the opposite of the nine is this, is a lack of benevolence, is a
right.
lack of compassion, is an over-identification with the ego.
Yeah,
And so I feel like that's going to be kind of a wonderful, beautiful Simone Biles esque balance beam act that we get to kind of walk and talk through in 2025.
except that according to my perspective of it, especially my vision in 2014, I was given such a strong message by the angelic realm that the light is greater than the darkness and the light is always winning. And I was shown a vision that looked like this. of the
Mhm.
light winning on earth, no matter how dark it can seem in the moment. And that message has really informed me these years of saying, it doesn't matter if there's a huge dark side, which there is, and it has to come to surface because everything has to be revealed to be healed. In the long run, the light always wins. And that cosmic message comes from believing that there is a source of love and light, call it God, call it whatever you want, that
Mhm.
runs this universe, and that cannot be overtaken. It is a God force of love and light. And I go back to that and say, yes, we can watch all of this play out on earth, the bad players doing what they came to do, the good players doing what they came to do. But we know that the light always wins in the long run.
Exactly. And I feel like the opposition is what's the friction there is the
Right.
necessity for to ignite that.
That's right. It's like giving
Mhm.
birth. You have to push to give birth. You have to almost push against something to have a new life come into the world. So that's what we're doing.
Yep, exactly. Exactly.
So, what would you say is the most helpful or meaningful part of numerology to you in your work with the numbers?
Oh, goodness. That's a big question. I just I look at, when I work with clients, I just look at a full chart and to be able to give that because I'm just the translator and I'm someone who I love looking at different schools of thought about a modality because I always find it very interesting. I don't think there's one way of doing or thinking about something. I think that to me, it's you can go. Everyology has its different frameworks. Like in astrology, I'm born on July 22nd. Some people consider me a Leo sun sign, some a Cancer. So it's for me to kind of decide what that is. So to me, I love, being able to look at this as a full spectrum and see what fits with individual people and how that
Spoken
how
like a
that might
three
show up.
path.
Yeah, yeah. And so there's a
Felicia is
lot
a
of
three path,
power
by
in
the
that.
way, listeners. I just want to tell the listeners, Felicia is on the three birth path, and that is the path of cerebral, creative thinking, being in your head a lot. And the call to action and the arc of learning is getting into the heart, as you know.
Mhm.
And we each have that arc of learning in our journey. And, in authenticity, you all know I'm on the 22 path, and that my call to action is to go from just pure work as my life and value to really opening my heart and shifting into the heart strength of the number four, not just the physical strength and all the other pieces of strength that are part of the 22 that can
Mhm.
make you very harsh on the world, but softening into the emotional resonance of the power of the heart to shift consciousness. So we all have an arc of learning that our lifetime takes us on. And you being so analytical and looking at it in such an intellectual way with numerology, and when I work with clients, I cover the whole chart as well, but I feel like I let my intuition guide me and the client, to the ultimate truth of it. And that's why our both of our perspectives are needed in the world, because there are many people who wouldn't resonate with my kind and many people who might not resonate with your kind of approach. So that's
Exactly.
why we need
Exactly.
so many voices.
Well, and I always will say, there's not just one doctor, one yoga
Right.
teacher, so
Yeah.
we move with that resonance.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In our soul agreement, I always love helping my clients look at their soul agreements with people because that's something they find so helpful, especially when they've lost a loved one and that they
Mhm.
need to look at the path of that loved one and the soul agreement that they still have. I work with lots of grieving moms, grieving parents, and they are developing relationship with their child in spirit. So looking at the soul agreement that continues on beyond the veil
Mhm.
is very helpful to them. And for you and me, our soul agreement is the number seven. And
Mhm.
seven is the number of greatest spiritual wisdom, greatest spiritual seeking and searching and growth. And yet, I often tell people it's shaped with sharp edges. You can see it in the
Mhm.
number seven. It's kind of like you can use it as a hammer, it can be very
Exactly.
critical and kind
Just
of
real quick,
snarky.
I don't want to interrupt, but also how, for your listeners who might not know how you calculate that, could you
Ah,
share
good.
how you might
Yes.
calculate that?
So my path is the 22 based on the number four, and Felicia's path is the three. So we add the four and the three together, and it gives us the soul agreement that
Okay,
we made
perfect.
before this lifetime begins. And we
Hmm.
said, yes, we'll meet each other at a pivotal point in Boulder, Colorado.
Right.
And we'll
Yeah.
both grow and teach in our own different ways and have our own lessons and gifts with each other. And here we are all these years later.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's always interesting. I find people are like, "Well, how do I get that? How do I understand how to do that
Yeah.
calculation?" But
And
yeah, it is a very soul-based, soul contract.
it is. And the thing is that, people might not realize is you and I, like we have hung out with each other's husbands and kids and families. So we have quite a close connection in that way.
Hmm.
I've been to
Hmm.
your house, you've been to mine, we've played. In fact, one year for Gene's birthday, you and your husband gave him, what was it, the second base from a famous
Oh, yes, I've
baseball
forgotten
team.
about that. Isn't that funny?
That
Yes,
was
yes,
so
yes.
great. So, we go way back in that. And I
Hmm.
think it's really important that we honor each other, especially at this pivotal time of having to bring this hard truth to the world about
Yeah,
2025 and what we're all being asked to do in the nine, which is surrender our attachment to how it goes, open our hearts, and
yeah,
trust that we're being guided. I mean, those are the great gifts of the nine is to open your hands and say, I release my resistance to what is happening. I surrender to where this is taking us all for highest good. That might need to
absolutely.
be our mantra this year.
Yes, yes, and that is the ultimate gift and wisdom of the nine, I
Yeah,
find, is surrendering to, and it's not just surrendering into, ah, I give up, right?
right, right.
It's
Surrender
like,
is not I give up.
yeah, it's leaning into
Yeah,
leaning into the curiosity.
yeah. So, for example, if we talk about our personal years, you're in a one personal year and I'm in a six. Now
Yes.
I'm in a six. But last year I was in a five personal year. And five is the number of physicality and passion, and often learning your lessons through your body, also
Hmm.
courage and change and all that great stuff. And I was diagnosed with cancer last April. And it came out of the blue. I thought it was something else because I've had a genetic heart valve issue my whole life. And so I thought
Hmm.
that's why I was feeling bad. And
Yeah.
in 2 days of last spring, I was diagnosed with colon cancer and had to have major surgery on my colon. And when I
Wow.
talk about surrender,
Ooh, yeah.
what I mean is that there are many soul agreements and soul lessons that are going to come our way in this lifetime that we agreed to before the life began. And they have a higher purpose for good and for our growth. And yet, when they hit us, we can often go, oh my God, this is the worst thing in the world that could happen. I don't
Right.
want this to happen. And that resistance stops us from being able to step into the magic of the flow of where the higher beings are taking us with
Yes.
this. And I
Yes.
remember in that diagnosis that I shut down my focus on the physical world because it was too overwhelming. My first husband, Paul, died of colon cancer, and I was his caregiver, and it was horrendous to
Mhm.
watch. So I
Yes.
had all those memories I had to purge. And then to go right to the angels and the higher source and say, I surrender my ideas of what I think this is.
Yeah.
Please show me where this is taking me and lift me above the pain, the fear, the negativity that my human self wants to go to. And Felicia, I was instantly lifted up. I was brought with the angels through the whole experience.
Mhm.
And I mean, it was so beautiful. I even got emotional thinking about all
Yeah.
the magic that happened and all the spirits that showed up to help me. And I can tell you now that there was no spread. They took out a big chunk of my colon, but they were
Mhm.
all amazed. They said, we thought
Yes.
for sure there was spread. They took out like 25 lymph nodes out of my colon, and there was like, there's no spread. And I know the beings,
Hmm.
especially Paul and Spirit, were saying, no, she doesn't need to go through all that.
Yeah. And not now. It's not
And
not
not
time
now.
quite yet.
Right.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so surrender for listeners does not mean that we curl up in a ball and say, I quit.
Yeah.
It means I surrender what my mind is trying to tell me this is about.
Yeah.
And I open my heart to let it take me where it needs to go.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's a beautiful way of looking at the totality of this because also the rubber meets the road when we can all pontificate all we want to until you get the diagnosis,
Yeah.
right? And then how do you work with that in a way that is in alignment? And obviously you did that, so
So
that's
what would
wonderful.
you
I'm
say
so
that
glad that
9 year
you're
was
well, by the
like
way.
for you? You had a 9 year last year. Did that shake your
Yeah.
world?
Oh, yes, it did. And luckily, to your point about how does numerology affect me or my daily life, I feel like having that knowledge allows to lean into that surrender, exactly what you're saying, rather than put that go, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, what is happening or not happening here. And so you have that beautiful knowledge and knowing and the tool of saying, this tide is out, girl. You might want it to be in, but the want is again what we're deconstructing here. And it was a year of, very much hermit kind of nothing was working the way I thought it would, should or would or anything. I
That's
felt
so nine, isn't it?
it's very nine and very, looking at it's like, okay, I know all this stuff has got to go. So it was a lot of, I always find the nine is a re-time, R-E, to review, to it's kind of
Mm,
like a retrograde
right.
session, but of a prolonged period of time where everything is in that rear view mirror, and yet you're looking at it and reviewing it and dissecting it and
Mm.
getting and really juicing the lessons out of it,
Mhm.
and to see how you can move those lessons into the next phase and stage, and
So
also
how would you say that
simultaneously clear
nine,
it out. Yeah.
so how did that nine change your life? Because a nine is always a life changer.
It's a life changer. Well, it was interesting because I was traveling in Europe and I came back and right at the beginning of the 9 year, and everything just energetically just it was like that sound, and nothing was moving. So it for me it has allowed certain shifts of frame of mind, just um really, really evaluating certain things. I'm at a certain point in my life where other things are changing. I've got, again, details are onerous. We could go into the rabbit hole, but about what am I doing? What is my work? How do I want to do that? What are the relationship factor? Where do I want to live? It was kind of this cacophony of grab bag
Yeah,
of where do I even focus first? And I think the nine often brings that in where there's just everything is up for grabs and up for review. So, and it
beautiful.
took and it took that long to really kind of get around that and get
Yeah.
myself around that, if that makes sense.
But that's such a good thing for the listeners to understand how the nine affects us personally. Because I'll even go
Yes.
back and say, the last time I was in a 9 year, was when Jean was diagnosed with cancer. We had to sell our Colorado home. We had to move to Arizona. I knew nobody in Arizona.
Right.
I felt like I was jumping off the cliff, and yes, but I knew it was the
And
right
you
thing
were.
to do, and I was jumping off the cliff.
Yeah.
But, I had to move us here, which meant cleaning out all the kids' stuff and the kids' rooms and all the family
The
stuff. The
emotions.
emotion of that was so difficult because I didn't know what would happen in Arizona. I didn't know if Jean would live or die. I didn't know if I'd ever make a friend here. And because I'd lived in Boulder, Colorado for more than 40 years.
Yes.
And and yet, that surrender, we're back to that word of the nine, of saying every day, please lift me above my anxiety, my worry, my fear, and show me the new and guide me to it with grace. Because once we landed here, magic happened. It took a little while. A 1 year it doesn't kick in
It doesn't hit the
instantly.
ground running. Yeah,
Right.
no, it doesn't. Yeah,
It took a
exactly.
little while, but now I'm 6 years in, Felicia, and
Hmm.
it's been the best time of my life. Like I have the
Fantastic.
best friends I've ever had here, which I never expected to find in my 70s in a whole new community.
Yeah.
And I love my work more than ever, and Jean is thriving. Like I could not have seen this play
You
out.
couldn't have scripted it
I couldn't
better.
have scripted it. And so we say this to you listeners. This is
Mhm.
how the nine works. It purifies you, it cleanses you, it gets rid of everything you think is so important to you. And then you
Mhm.
find yourself in a whole new level where it's so much better. In fact, you have to come back on this podcast in a few years, Felicia, and tell us where this new personal cycle has taken you.
Exactly. And it is, and and through your coursework at, when I first met you and taking the classes, it's wonderful to, if you're out there and you know how to do the personal years, to just backtrack throughout your life and to look at those, I call them those punctuation marks, those exclamation marks in your life. Oh, this is when I got a divorce. This is when I had a baby. This is when I graduated. This is when I
Right.
moved. This is when the diagnosis. Oftentimes it's in that nine arena.
Oh yeah. And that's what
Yeah.
I love most about my client sessions is that I outline all those 9 year cycles for them
Yeah.
and walk them through them. And even if they're cynical about numerology at first, once they've gone through and said, "Oh my God, yes, that 9 year was when my husband left me," or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah. You
start
can't make
going,
it
you
up.
see, you can't make it up. It's part of a life plan. Your soul chose this journey perfectly for your growth, and
Yeah.
it's all outlined and explained in numerology. So, how blessed are we that we get to share this with our students and clients?
Absolutely. And, with ourselves, I think that it's
Mhm.
just been such a profound
Yeah.
um, tool for personal growth. Yeah.
I was going to add into that when I was going through my health crisis, the numbers were showing up in so many amazing ways for me, like the hospital room that I was in when I got my cancer diagnosis,
Oh,
digited to the number nine, right? So I knew instantly I had to surrender my feelings and thoughts about it and my fear. And then after surgery, I was brought into a hospital room that digited to the 33 master soul number. I mean, you just
yeah.
can't make this stuff up. And my
Yeah.
girlfriends would come in to visit and they would see the 33 up there and they'd be going, "Oh my God, this is so
This is,
amazing."
yeah, exactly. Holding that container of unconditional love for you.
That's
So,
right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
all of our people listening and all of our clients get the benefit of knowing that the numbers are always helping us. They're never
Mhm.
anything to be afraid of. I believe there's no such thing as a bad number or any
No.
of that. And that Felicia and I both are here to serve you all understand how your soul planned a map for you in this lifetime. And
Yeah.
it's all in numerology. So what would you like to leave the visitors or the listeners with, Felicia?
Well, I just feel like again to be, just I think that all of us are benefiting, first of all, from really taking a review and looking at it's not going to be business as usual. So many things are changing from, just massively. And to move from fear to some excitement.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
wow, look, we're changing. To me, the nine is like a graduation.
Yeah,
It's like a
definitely a
graduation
graduation.
ceremony,
Yeah,
right? So you're still doing what you're still kind of going to class and you're still
right.
doing whatever, but there's this bittersweetness underneath it
Yeah,
because you know that soon, you're going to be walking across that stage, get the diploma, your friends are going to be dispersing, yeah, everyone's going on to a
right.
different part of life. So it's a commencement. So
Hmm.
it has this beautiful energy to it, but again, there's a lot of emotions, a little bit of that bittersweet, a lot of uncertainty, and that's built in. That's part of the magic of it and the
Yeah. And
beauty.
we do have to feel that grief. I mean, I tell my
Yeah.
clients all the time, as long as we're walking on earth, we still have a part of us that has to walk through that emotion, that
Yes.
grief, that loss. I remember packing up my daughter's bedroom in my nine personal year and just crying, like
Yes.
you just gotta cry it out sometimes. You've
Yes.
just gotta let it go. But at the same time that you're doing that, you're trusting. And I
Hmm.
guess trust is the important word. That
Yes.
somehow, some way, beyond my ability to understand or see or control, I will end up in a better place, a better phase of
Yes.
my journey. So, on
Exactly.
that note, thank you so much, Felicia. Very
Thank
fun.
you.
Very
Yes.
fun to see you, and I can't wait to see where this new one's year takes you and your new cycle. And
Yes. Me too.
so, where do they find you? What's your website?
FeliciaBender.com.
Beautiful. And mine is SueFrederick.com. All right. Good night and good day, and see all of you again, and we'll have a mystical conversation again. Thank you.